thank you so much for those that are joining this episode 4 of Portainerd season 2. Right. Today we're going to talk about security in your containerized world or environment, how to secure that via Portainer. There are several aspects that we're going to touch because Portainer comes with, and I think both Dimko and I, we were surprised. We're writing the script and we're like, wow, we can talk about this and then this and then this. And then like the list was huge. We didn't realize how much Portainer can enhance your security in terms of the containerized environment that you're working on, regardless if it's Docker or Kubernetes. But as you know, the Portainerd series is focused on Kubernetes. So because, and this is the opening phrase of this episode, we know that Kubernetes is not safe. It's not by default a safe environment. I mean, it's not that it's unsafe. That's not also the concept, is that it's open by nature, right? So there are several tools in the, let's say, Kubernetes marketplace, if you may, that helps both platform engineers and dev and DevOps to secure your Kubernetes environment. And Portainer definitely comes with a good amount of a war chest, I would say, filled with security features for us to take a look at. So without further ado and blah, 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 let me start sharing my screen. And let's start talking about what we can do. Right, I hope everybody can see my screen. Okay, so first things first, let's start with RBAC, right, Dimko? It was the RBAC?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, RBAC. Okay, so but before that, let me just stop sharing my screen because I have to bring up an image that translates. I think I love this image. Translates very well what RBAC is all about with Kubernetes. Yeah, I just love this image. It's just hilarious. And I'm going to start sharing again. There you go. Desktop share. Okay. So this is the image, right? We actually have a video. I would kindly invite you to go into our YouTube channel and check a video that is RBAC, traditional Kubernetes RBAC versus Portainer RBAC. And this is where you are at when it comes to Kubernetes RBAC. And I'll give a brief explanation of why it's so. Everything has to be done like if you do traditional Kubernetes management by hand. So you have to set up service accounts, user roles, and start doing all the associations, right? This is why it becomes cumbersome. So for each resource that you have in your Kubernetes cluster, there's a YAML definition, right? And if you have 1, 2, 3 members in a team, it starts getting complicated. In my opinion, anything above 5 just becomes a nightmare because there are so many YAML files to define so many cross definitions of users versus resources versus services versus like blah, 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 that, it can get very confusing. You have to have some sort of control. It can be an Excel spreadsheet, but that also can get outdated very quickly. And it's not easy to manage. And you have situations like, for instance, if a user leaves a given structure of the company or even of a team, you have to like roll back and remove that user from all the n amount of clusters that you have in a given environment, right? So it gets very complex. Plus, if you want to move a user from one given, let's say, resource within your Kubernetes cluster to another, again, you have to roll back everything and redo all these definitions into whatever new resources, be that an environment or a namespace or a service account, whatever that is. So it's extremely complex, right? Plus, finally, Kubernetes does not have a way for you to visualize, easily who is where and doing what, right? And this is where we come in with one of the most powerful features we have today with Kubernetes. in Portainer. And this is RBAC. Now, the interesting thing about our RBAC engine is that it works for any environment, right? It works for Docker, Docker Swarm, Kubernetes. So whatever you define here, you will define once only. And you won't need to replicate that in X amount of resources, or sorry, of environments that you're managing within Portainer, meaning here I have two, right? Docker, one Docker and one Kubernetes environment. I could have like 100 Kubernetes environments here. And with Portainer, you only manage your users with one single interface. Plus, the business edition of Portainer comes already with a preset of 5 roles, which, in our opinion, from what we've seen in terms of usage, with not only with internally but with our clients, these are pretty much all. This is pretty much all you need in terms of roles to manage your Kubernetes environment. So basically, we have the administrator, God mode, that the user that can do pretty much everything via Portainer on any of the environments as well, or in the environment that he's assigned to. And you have the operator, that is basically someone that just manages resources within that given environment, namespaces, quotas, load balancers, etc., registries. So this operator pretty much manages, let's say, the components of the infrastructure of the Kubernetes cluster. Help desk is a read-only access. It's like God mode, but with read-only access, right? He can see everything, but he cannot do anything. And it's a very important role, in my opinion, because it's someone that can help visualize very quickly or in a very focused manner issues or situations that are happening in your environment, to address that, to like he can do the first triage of an issue or a situation that needs to be attended to in the Kubernetes cluster, and very quickly help the platform team, already come with an idea what they have to do. And then we have standard and read-only user. These guys, well, that's a standard user. He doesn't have all the capabilities of management of the orchestrator, meaning management of the Docker Swarm, or Kubernetes orchestrator, but can definitely use Portainer to manage containers and do all his container management that he's assigned to in terms of resources. And the read-only user, well, it's the same thing as a standard user, but with the same concept of the help desk role, that is ability to see everything that the standard user does, but he cannot do anything, right? And here, when I say effective access viewer, this is, again, it's something that I mentioned that you don't see this in Kubernetes, or neither in Docker. You don't have this type of view that we provide in our RBAC engine. Finally, in terms of RBAC, we have teams. That is something that you also get with the Portainer Business Edition. The ability to use teams and assign teams, again, to resources within your given environments, especially when it comes to Kubernetes, the environment and the namespace. So it's very powerful. It's a very interesting feature. Right. So how you have several options in terms of RBAC. You see that here we have 2 users already, right? Dimko and myself, right? And we're not assigned to anything, right? We're just here, sitting here. But how were these users generated? Where do they come from? And you'll see when I click on the user tab, there's these 2 users coming from an LDAP source. It's not exactly LDAP in this case. Let me check if it's, yeah, right. And this is the second part. This is the second part that I'm going to show you in terms of RBAC with Portainer, which is the integration of RBAC with authentication engines. Okay, so in this demo, I'm going to show 2 very common authentication engines. LDAP is one, and Microsoft AD is another. And then we have others like OpenAuth, Open Authentication with Microsoft, Google, and GitHub. And these are quite easy to integrate with Portainer. We have in our documentation website all the necessary items that you need to set up in this form to be able to integrate any of these into your Portainer instance. So It's very interesting because this is a second security feature that we see that is very important with Portainer. I mean, first, the ability with one single engine manage all the roles, access, and users within a given environment. Now, not only that, but also how to bring from external authentication engines that into Portainer. So, for instance, I have LDAP here, and all you have to do is follow the LDAP. Actually, I'm using Open LDAP. All you have to do is follow the LDAP configuration. And there's Microsoft AD. Let's go to Open LDAP. The IP address, if I'm not mistaken, is 10.147.20.389, right? I think it's 389. Okay. The CN equals, so let me check something here. And this is where it's very easy. I have an LDAP instance here. I can go to, might have to log in again. Oh, yeah. I have to log in. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, the log out of this interface is like minutes. If you're not on it, it just logs you out very quickly. DC equal Portainer, DC equal IO. And this is the password that I'm not going to mention.
I love that LDAP. Really,
sorry.
I love that LDAP UI. I spent countless hours working on that at some point in my life.
Yeah. So
to me.
this is what's cool about this LDAP interface is I just copy. Let me increase the font here. I just can copy the path, right, or the OU into, let's say, now let me go back to normal, just a little bit. And I can very easily, okay, I managed to connect successfully here. Let me just quit my chat box here, sorry. And so very easily I can, like, for instance, I want to make sure that I have a set of groups that are allowed to use Portainer. If I'm not mistaken, this is groups. It should be like this. CNDev team, groups, yep, display users. Sorry. I don't know why. I mean, sometimes it gives me this issue. I'll get back to this soon, but basically, and it's a problem with my network, guys, but it will work. You'll see by the end of this, Portainer will make sure this works. So basically, all you have to do is set the paths that you have in your interface. Like, for instance, the group I have here is, let's say, dev team. And I set up this path. I'm going to increase the font a little bit so you can see. You have to make sure that the string of the path matches whatever definition you need right here in terms of filters. And boom, there you go. And it works. I'm sure it works. Believe me, it does work. And the proof of that.
I tested that before, so it
yeah, I mean, it's something that you test millions of times, and when it comes to doing that live, it doesn't. But here I have my personal Portainer instance that has LDAP up and running, and it's working. So I know it works. So yeah, I'm pretty sure this works very nicely. Let me see display users there. Yeah, you see Lorenzo, I'm here. So it's good to have a backup during your presentations to show that it works. And it works very nicely. I really like LDAP, and LDAP is a powerful authentication engine, or better said, not only for that, but information engine, if you may. So it's not hard. I mean, all you have to do is put in the proper definitions, and it'll work very nicely. And the proof that it also works is that I just click on connectivity, and it does connect to my LDAP server. And the other option that I have here to show you guys is something that is very similar to our LDAP, because it's actually based on LDAP, and that's Microsoft AD. Let me also do a test here. Test connectivity. Yep, it connected. I mean, the protocol is pretty much the same. If I'm not mistaken, the port is the same. And I define the group. I display the users, and I have here Dimko and myself. If I want to
Mhm.
add another, no, sorry, it's not here. If I want to add another group, I can just add another search definition. Let's say marketing and display users. And then now we have an additional user, Mark Smith, that he's in marketing, that can also have access to Portainer. So it's very easy. All you have to do is define your groups and provide the search string of that group within your Microsoft AD template form here that we have with Portainer. So you make sure that these users can have access to whatever users you have in those groups can have access to your Portainer instance. So let me remove marketing, and I'm going to show you something. I'll try to log in as M Smith, Agent Smith. Let's see if this works. Oh, I'm dying to see my Matrix 4. God, I really want to watch that.
Yes, indeed.
And he
same.
cannot log in. He cannot log in. But let's say Dimko. Can Dimko log in? Oops. Dimko.
Mhm.
Yes,
And
he
you know
can.
my password. Is that how we secure that?
Haha, because I'm the god of this environment, so I define your life. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I put in the password here. Let me show you the I'm actually running a Windows 2019, yeah, server on Amazon, right? And I just set it up just for this demo, where here you can see like the users. Let's see users here: Adolfo, Dimko, Mark Smith, and the groups that they belong to, marketing and dev team, right? So it works very nicely. It works very nice. In this case, it's not a Portainer is not connecting to any of the environments directly via the internet. I set up a VPN. So it's also quite interesting to mention that, because it's another security best practice, in my opinion. I mean, don't expose, if you're running your environment on the cloud, don't expose that too much unless you have to. On the cloud, make sure you use the internal networks that the proper cloud provider has for you to manage your resources, your instances, your computes, or your virtual machines, whatever you're using. Or you can use a virtual private network if you need to have external environments like Portainer accessing several other tools like the Microsoft AD Authentication server or your Kubernetes environment. That's usually considered a best practice. And we have actually a video, also another video on internet that shows how to connect to your Portainer instance via WireGuard VPN, an end-to-end connection just of a machine and a Portainer instance via WireGuard. You can use whatever VPN you want, but it's just the concept that shows you that's a very good practice to have in terms of usage of and a security best practice to have in terms of usage of Portainer with your external environments. Right, so that's the second thing I wanted to show you. First was RBAC, second is integration of authentication engines with RBAC. We saw on my personal instance LDAP. We see here Microsoft AD. It works very nicely. And then there was we have all the other options like open authentication that I mentioned that unfortunately Dimko and I, we didn't have time to do all of these. But in a future episode, we'll definitely want to show how to integrate also Microsoft, Google, and GitHub open authentication provider or engines into Portainer. Right. Dimko, please tell me what's the next one on the list?
I think we've covered pretty much it. The only one that I think you were missing is the teams, but we discussed that in the very
good.
beginning.
No, good point. Yeah, good point. I mean, in terms of teams, you can also match your teams to your groups if you want to. So there's a way to integrate teams and have teams update from the groups that you have matched. Like for instance, here, in terms of teams, what Teams is seeing are the users that match the dev team group, right? Yeah. So as long as you populate your dev team group on your authentication engine, you'll be able to have that integrated within Portainer without having to like recreate those users in Portainer. It's going to come automatically from your authentication engine, be that LDAP, Microsoft AD, Open Authentication.
And I think that's the most beautiful thing about that. So in most of the organizations, you don't roll out a whole list of users for a tool like Portainer, but instead you already have like a single sign-on tool.
Yeah.
All of that authentication is already covered because that's the organization, that's the corporate kind of thing. And being able to just connect that to Portainer, I think is the key, is just a deal breaker here. So Perfect. You don't need to create anything on your own, just connect that, and all of the same users that you have in your authentication engine are the same users that you have in Portainer, and you are able to give as granular access to them as you would want. So as you would let's try, give me the access over the Kubernetes, let's say. This is exactly like you didn't put me into the system. Instead, I was in our authentication system, and you just connected that system, and I just appeared here. So now you're able to add me as a let's say admin of that shit.
Yeah. So like for instance, Kubernetes, I'm gonna add and then I'm gonna show the difference between adding a Dimko as an endpoint administrator, or God mode, if you may, and adding Adolfo as a standard user.
Yep.
Right. So I'm going to log in as AD Lorenzo, my user, into this Kubernetes environment via Portainer.
Yeah. Nice.
This is again being authenticated directly with the Microsoft AD engine.
Yes. So if we remove you from Microsoft IDE, then you wouldn't be able to log in. All of the changes propagates. That's quite
nice. Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
here I have access to this Kubernetes environment, but I can't do anything. I don't have any namespaces associated to me. I don't have any, better said, I don't have any namespaces assigned to me.
But you are able to at least see that cluster and see what's going on with that. So that's very cool.
Yeah. Now I'm going to log in as Dimko.
Meanwhile, maybe I'll create some namespace and assign that to me.
Cool. And Dimko on this, and you see Dimko only has access to that given environment, which was a Kubernetes environment that I added him to. And he has full admin capabilities to this environment. So he can like play with the setup, enable or disable features. Actually, let's leave the metric server on. This is nice. And do everything that you would want as a administrator of this environment via Portainer, right? So I think that covers everything. We touched RBAC, we touched open authentication or authentication engine integration, and as Dimko reminded us, teams, right? The sync of teams within Portainer against your authentication engine. And with that, I'll pass on to Dimko, that is going to show other very interesting features of security features that we have within Portainer. So I'll stop sharing, and now I leave that with you. Let me check the chat in the meantime.
I think you gotta allow me to share.
Can I? You cannot?
Yes, I cannot, unfortunately.
Wait, hold on. Oh, Oh, boy.
Yes.
I thought I had left you as a panelist, but now I'll leave you as a co-host. Can you now?
Okay, I can, I think. Let me know once you can see that.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. And let me just quickly move a few bits around so it's 100% understandable. So I'm still logged in as that same user as Joe, who is our admin. And I was just curious who actually did the logins to our Portainer instance. And there is a bit here saying authentication logs. And I think now I'm able to know the IP of Adolfo. I think here it is. And I can see all of the logs beyond what has happened to the system in terms of login, logout, authentication, etc., which is quite nice. We can see that Dimko, Adolfo, all the same IP, so we can figure out that the same person was logging in under different usernames, same as Joe
Yeah.
here, which is quite nice, really.
What happens if we refresh this now? Dimko, just
Oh,
refresh
yeah.
the list. Okay.
So, what did you do? Tell us.
I changed my IP address and I
So
logged in as
now,
Delorenzo.
yeah. Yes, indeed, indeed. So now it shows us a different IP address. So what we have here is the ability to search and to filter. So let's say, let's get all of the entries which are concerning Dimko, and here it is. So first I logged in at 12:28 today, and if we have a look at the entries concerning anything containing AD, this would be Adolfo Delorenzo and all of his logins, as you can see. So that's quite nice.
I heard that SpongeBob tried to log in. Is that true?
Oh yeah, really? I thought he was already going onto his pension, onto his 401 form.
Yeah. So
Oh,
this is also
he was here.
was here.
Crazy, and
He
he didn't
tried
manage.
to log in.
He didn't manage, and maybe that's because we have a really secure instance, so it didn't give any access to the SpongeBobs.
Yep.
And so here we can also export that as CSV. I don't know if that's too usable within that session, but that incorporates all of the filters that you've done and all of the data that you have here, basically. Cool. I think that's pretty much it. You can also have a look at that within some data range, within some days. I think that's pretty much it from the authentication events perspective. And also an interesting bit in terms of security, in terms of identifying what actually happened to the system are the authentication logs. And these are just dumps from what happens with our API and what happens with like how other systems interact with the Portainer API, how they do their requests onto us, and what we do in terms of our environments. So here we're able to see that Dimko was trying to patch the endpoint, and I assume that this is the Kubernetes endpoint. So if you're too curious, you can have a look at that and see what kind of data we are trying to update. But anyway, if you're already interested in that, you're able to sniff that with any kind of a fiddler or anything like that. So that's good, I assume. Oof, my dog is going crazy. That's good, I assume. Just give me a sec. She's gone. Wow, crazy. So other than that, what do we have? I go ahead and tell you a story on self-signed certificates and Chrome, which I was fighting today for a bit of a time. So as you see now, I'm still connected as HTTPS, right? And it gives me the warning that this is not secure, even though I like generated that certificate today, and this is the self-signed. And in all other browser it works, but not in Chrome. So just for the sake of the demo, I'll show that here. So I have that HTTPS, and in Microsoft Edge, that's the new generation of Internet Explorer, which came pre-installed on my machine, and it's saying that connection is secure. So why do we need that HTTPS, and why it is so important? So we are enforcing that now. This enables you to have the secure connection from one end to another end, and one end is like my local machine, where I request the data out of that website. So it has the IP and some port. And in between, there might be hacker Adolfo sitting in front of us and trying to sniff our traffic and substitute that with any kind of malicious data. So trying to change the requests. So my requests appear to be me, but in the end, it's Adolfo. So this is easily mitigated by having the HTTPS enforced, by having TLS, by having the certificate, which ensures that you are you and your application, your website is your website. And this is the way that you do this kind of a handshake. How to do that in Portainer? You have the settings, and it has the section on SSL certificate. So I've enabled forcing HTTPS only. So now Portainer initially had a HTTP port open and HTTPS. But now what we are suggesting is that you better use HTTPS with any of these certificates you have, because if you don't, then there is a security risk. So what I did is simply adding the files from my local folder that I've generated a while ago. So this is the cert.pem and key.pem. So here, oops. Misclick key. So here the cert.pem goes into play, and here the key.pem goes into play. So key.pem is exactly the private key that you need for enabling that to work onto your website. But on all of the other ends, you only need the cert.pem to be accepted. So if I was about to give access to that instance to Adolfo, I would just send him that certificate and say, hey, just use that, and this would be exactly no problem. So, and after you're done, just hit apply changes, and it will enforce the HTTPS with that given certificate. So now what I have here is this certificate, and in Chrome it doesn't work, and Microsoft Edge, it shows that it's completely secure. But here it doesn't, because of that is a self-signed one. So if you want to remove that label not secure, just go get Let's Encrypt or anything like that. Cool. I think that's it.
Sorry,
Dimko,
yeah? Just a correction. I don't think we're supporting Let's Encrypt yet because of the format of the. I
think you just froze. Adolfo? Yes, it might be. So we don't support Let's Encrypt. I'll just get back to you on that topic, but I think we should be. Let me know in the chat if what kind of certificates you're using for running your systems, and that would be greatly beneficial. And also let me know if you can hear me. That would be perfect. He froze, yeah, right? Adolfo is gone. Let's hope that the internet and Brazil is going to be back, because he's in Brazil now. Hopefully he'll be able to rejoin, but meanwhile, I'll just carry on. You know how all of that internet providers in these countries, they're blocking too much of the traffic. So that's, sometimes it becomes an issue, but hopefully he'll come back. The next bit that I'm planning to show is, so I've created that fancy namespace, Dimko. Let's actually create a one from scratch. So let's create a namespace from form, Dimko test ns, let's call that. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that security is not only the role-based access, security is not only the authentication, etc. It's also the operations, and operations which require some restrictions. And what I mean by that is it would be just not too wise if you would enable all of your developers, all of your teams to blow up your Kubernetes cluster by giving them all of the resources that you have. Instead, what I suggest we should be doing is setting some meaningful limits and quotas per each namespace. So, of course, no one should have the access to the default namespace, and you will be able to create that kind of a separation by teams using namespaces. So team one has the namespace one, Dimko test ns. And with that, what we agreed is that they will, let's say they will take exactly half of our memory available in our cluster, and they would be able to take exactly one CPU out of our cluster, which is also a half. And if they try to do anything beyond that, they would face an error here, because they're simply not allowed to do more. So this way you would be able to ensure that safe and secure operations of your cluster and of your resources. So let's create that namespace, and yeah, let's just hit that create namespace button. And you see it shows now here that here the quota is enabled, yes. And I'm able to deploy any of the applications in that namespace. So by the way, we can also go in and see managing of the access. So I'd be able to give Adolfo the access as a standard user to that namespace. So once he's back, he'd be able to deploy any of the applications. And an interesting bit that he didn't show, but I think is too important to neglect, is the view onto, yes, this one, effective access viewer. So this is the bit that I like really much. This gives you the idea of what user is able to access what. So as we went through the demo that Adolfo did, he assigned me as an endpoint administrator onto a whole Kubernetes environment. But if we go to Adolfo Delorenzo, he is a standard user on the same Kubernetes environment, which is exactly what we've trying to achieve, to be able to very easily, in a matter of a few seconds, identify who is able to do what. So I think that pretty much does the job. And this is exactly what we need. I think let's also have a look at the activity logs for a bit. An interesting bit that we figure out right before preparing the demo is that it also shows you the Kubectl shell logs here, activity logs. So if I do Kubectl get pods, and if I do that within all of the namespaces, it shows me the pods here. And if I quickly refresh that, it shows that Joe was able to run that Kubectl shell container and what kind of stuff it did with that. So what was the pod name that we used to run with that Kubectl shell? That's quite handy, I'd say. So you're able to see what your fellow users are doing with your Portainer instance. I think that pretty much covers everything that I had as of today on my plate. I think Adolfo is back, but he's in the chat. Should I enable you to become a participant or a panelist? I think so. Nevertheless, I think that's it from my side. Let me know if you have any question, guys, and meanwhile I'll go through the chat.
Dimko, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, right. No, I just wanted to add something quickly to the Kubectl shell that you showed, not only from a logging perspective, but it has an additional security component to it, which is you don't need to open an additional shell to access your cluster.
Yes,
so
indeed.
There are two things that you avoid: having to expose your port 22 or whatever port you're using for SSH, and having to expose your Kube API port. So that in itself is a security component that the Kubectl shell brings also in terms of enabling a more tight access to your environment via Portainer.
Yes, indeed, I agree 100% to that. And simply that's very common practice in the security assessment. So the less of the entry points you have, the better. The easier it is to secure that. And if your only entry point is Portainer, just make sure that you've went through all of that list of getting the OAuth provider, getting the HTTPS, getting all of the security features built in. And then if that's only thing that is exposed to the external world from your cluster, then you should be fine. And if you add a VPN on top of that, so only people within some particular VPN can connect to that Portainer instance, then you should be 200% fine.
Perfect. Yep, absolutely. Right then, do we have any questions?
Let me just quickly go through the chat. Okay, so Portainer can easily integrate with Kclog and Authentic. Yes, indeed. Let me know if you would appreciate a bit of the content on that.
Yeah, maybe we should think of creating something with specifically on the authentication engines. What do you think, Dimko?
Yes, indeed, might be. So with that, there are plenty of them to choose from. The one from Google, Microsoft Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, the one from Amazon, Okta, all of that is just there are too many of them, and
Yeah,
I think all of them, they share the same kind of idea, right? And the same kind of the interface to interact with them. So I think we would be able to manage to get some of them.
Yep.
Into the video or stuff like that.
GitLab Auth works too. Maybe
I don't know
via the custom integration, very likely.
I don't know
Can
if
you open
GitLab
that?
Auth as OAuth adopt that.
But in Portainer, there's an option
Yes,
for
it
custom
works.
OAuth, and that's
Yeah,
where
it
we
works.
integrate Authentic, Keycloak, probably GitLab. Yeah. Oh, GitLab can work with Keycloak. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Perfect. There you go. You click on Open Auth.
Yes, and if you have all of these done, then that's it. That's pretty much it. What you need in terms of enabling the OAuth. And I just Googled that. So GitLab supports OAuth 2.0, which is exactly what you need. So it should be working easy peasy.
Cool.
I suppose. And GitLab can also work with Kclog. So all of these bits of software can be combined all together. And in the end, you have a beautiful, charming thing that works. Yes.
Right then, do we have any more questions?
I don't think so. I think we're pretty much covered. Do you have anything to add, Adolfo?
Sorry, you were asking me if I have anything else to add?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think recapping a little bit, just what we went through. RBAC, Open Authentication Integration Teams, those are access security features. And Dimko demonstrated operations, right? Operational security features of Portainer, HTTPS, the authentication logs, the activity logs,
Namespaces.
and yeah,
Quotas,
quotas, users, Kubectl. I mean, again, there's tons of tools that in Portainer help you secure your container and containerized environment, and allow you to have secure access to the Portainer instance in itself, plus the other videos that we mentioned that can also be used as an additional layer of security, like the VPN. And also what we saw initially that we mentioned, the whole concept of RBAC with Kubernetes that is not secure, because Kubernetes by nature is not secure, and how we resolve this issue with our RBAC engine by being concise and in one single place where you can do absolutely everything that you need from a role-based access control perspective. So yeah, and well, if we don't have any more questions, we can give you guys back 9 minutes. I'd like to thank you, everyone. Dimko, it's always fun doing this with you. I have a great time when we do this together.
Sir.
And that's it. I think I just like to wish everyone a great weekend. Next week is our last episode of the year, so please stay tuned. It'll be on the 22nd. Yep. And then I'm going to show Edge, specifically Edge management with Portainer. Hope Dimko can join us also. Yeah, we'll show something that is unique in the container management space, if you may, that Portainer has. It has already been considered by the CNCF group our secret weapon, right? We heard that today from our CEO, and that's a huge compliment because we really work hard to have, you know, the best in class in terms of container management. And you'll see how to manage edge devices with Portainer, and how to not only manage edge devices, but also manage containers on edge devices via Portainer. So yeah, that's going to be very, very nice. And thank you very much. I think, yeah, that's for me. I'll close with, again, thanking everyone and hoping to see you next week.
Perfect, perfect. I bet that Nazari mentioned you're doing some data centers. So I bet that this is extremely useful in data center environment. And we've seen multiple of these feedbacks from people running data centers solely on Portainer Community Edition, which is crazy if you think about that.
Yeah, definitely. Right then, well, thank you guys. Dimko, thank you so much.
Thanks everyone, and talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, wait, Dimko.
Yes.
We forgot something.
Oh, yes. So we actually didn't forget, but we kept that as a secret because that's a bit of a treasure. So a few things. First one, we are preparing a video on Kube API, on Kube proxying, as where Portainer can act as a proxy between some application, a tool, your own app, etc., onto the Kubernetes. And Adolfo is the man on that. So he's taking care of that video. So make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Adolfo, you want to give a teaser?
Yeah, you're gonna see how cool. I mean, I'll give you an idea of the architecture I prepared. It's just a cluster running on a cloud. It's one node cluster, but it's running on a cloud provider that it's totally isolated from the internet. The only connection that this cluster has with the, let's say, it's an external entity is with a Portainer instance running on a VPN. That's the only connection that this Kubernetes cluster has with, let's say, an external entity. So there's no way to access this from outside. And you'll see how Portainer allows third-party tools to integrate with this Kubernetes cluster using the Kube API proxy feature that we have. That Dimko, if you just could point your mouse on top of the button so people can see the Kube config button that we have. Yeah, that one. So I'm going to demonstrate how to use this feature. It's so cool. I'm not even a developer, and I managed to run Python code on and interact with this Kubernetes cluster via the Portainer proxy, Kube API proxy feature. So it's a really, really cool video that I'm finishing this week. So as Dimko said, subscribe to our channel and you'll be able to see that. It's really nice. And
Indeed.
finally, we have the 5 nodes free. So everyone that wants to have access to our business edition of Portainer, you can now do so by subscribing to our 5 nodes free license, meaning the first 5 nodes that you have running in your environment are for free, lifetime, with full access to all the business edition features. That's what we believe a way to democratize access to our tool. So anyone, absolutely anyone, as long as you use a corporate or a university email domain to register, can have access to this amazing license. I really encourage you guys to take advantage of this. And yeah, and that's it. Those were the 2 little last things that we wanted to mention.
Indeed. Yes, it's I just subscribed for 5 nodes free. It took me about 20 seconds. So hopefully that would be useful for you guys. And I think that's it from our side. Thanks everyone again. And
thank you guys.
Talk to you
Have a
later.
great one. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye-bye.